Greetings, welcome back to CS195 Web Development. This is week 6, CSS Layouts Part 1. We are on lesson position. And if you remember from last lesson, we talked about the box model and then how the spacing works around elements, the padding, and then that's where the background takes place, then the border, and then the margin outside, just kind of giving you space on the outside of this. So, also just answered the question. Our objective is for this one, positioning, is to understand how to move elements around on a page, right? So kind of as we're going through the next few pieces of the lessons, we're now actually going to be how do we move items around. So we talked about resizing stuff and then spacing stuff, but now we're really focused on how to move items around. So this is one of the most basic ones where you literally just move it to where you want it to go, and from relative to absolute. And our success criteria is to demonstrate a rule that changes the position of an element and then place that element on top of other elements. All right, so we'll see what that means in a little bit, but our goal is to make sure so you can make a rule that positions an element on top of another element. And we'll kind of see in this video real quick what that looks like.
Now we'll learn how to use CSS to really move things around. Not just put them next to each other, but actually put things on top of each other. Here we have a web page with a few headers and images and some paragraphs down here. And it's currently all laid out with the default positioning strategy which the browser uses, which we call static or normal positioning. It just means that inline elements like images are laid out from left to right, and block elements like headers and paragraphs are laid out from top to bottom. We can change that positioning strategy using the CSS position property. Let's try it on the landscape image. We'll type position, colon, and then relative for the value. The relative position strategy means position it how you normally would, but then offset it by some amount. Now, to tell the browser what amount we want to offset by, we need to use some combination of 4 new CSS properties: top, bottom, left, and right. Like, let's say we want to have it be 20 pixels down, say top 20 pixels, and 10 pixels over, we'll say left 10 pixels. So that's kind of neat, but not really that neat. I want to show you something way cooler.
And we'll see this relative. It is useful. We'll see it better with some text and other stuff that we're going to see in a little bit when it's relative to what it is. This is, again, why the backgrounds help so much. But, again, what she's going to show us next is a lot more powerful.
Absolute positioning. We can use it to take an element completely out of the normal flow and put it anywhere on the screen. To do that, I will change relative to absolute on the landscape and keep the top left. And you can see the landscape is now hiding our images and dance party heading. And now we're going to fix that. Let's start with Winston. So add a rule for Winston and give Winston a position absolute. And then let me say top 40 pixels. So let's say top 50 pixels and then left 50 pixels. Okay, that looks good. And Hopper is really eager to get on.
Again, that's kind of from where she's saying it. So she said top, so from the top of it, and then from the left. So from the top, you go down 50 pixels, and from the left, you go over 50 pixels. That's kind of the concept of this, how it's working. So it's from where you tell it to go from, and then down. And again, if you were the bottom, if she's told it to go bottom, it'd go to the bottom of the page. And then when you say 50 pixels, it'd be up from that in that case. It's 50 pixels away from the bottom. So do be cognizant of how that works.
Top as well. So let's say Hopper also needs a position absolute. And let's say top 30 pixels and left 60 pixels. Okay, so my goal is to make it look like Hopper is kind of dancing in front of Winston. But right now it doesn't look that way because Winston is being drawn on top of Hopper. To fix this, I could either change the order of the actual image tags in the HTML, but a kind of better way is to...
So what she's saying, I'm just going to explain this real quick, is she has the landscape, then the avatar Hopper, and then Winston. So by default, it players this one, then it puts that picture on top of it. So if we could just swap these two, and it would fix it. But I mean, if you had a lot of photos, what she's about to show you is a much better system to do it.
Use the CSS z-index property. We can use that to tell the browser exactly what order to draw elements in by giving them different z-indexes. So I'll start with the landscape and give it a z-index of 1. And then Winston goes on top with 2. Hopper goes on top with 3. All right, now Hopper.
So hopefully you caught this, but the higher the number, the farther to the front it's going to be. So if you want something, a lot of times what people do, if they just want something always to be on the front, they'll put 99 because you're probably not going to have that many layers. So 99 is going to put it on the top. I've seen that a lot with stuff, so you just don't have to really worry about it. I know I want this on the top. Just give it a 99, and the higher the number, the further up front it is.
Is dancing in front of Winston, even if he doesn't like that, but have to deal. Now, we still have headings and poems that are hidden. So let's see. Let's try and get maybe I want the dance party to be on top of everything. So I'm also going to give that position absolute and z-index 4. Okay, it looks good. Maybe left 10 pixels. Just move it over a bit, maybe a bit more. All right, that looks good. Now for the song lyrics, I actually just want them to display underneath everything. So for those, I'm thinking position relative, and then we could just do a top, which is kind of equal to the height of the image, so maybe 220 pixels. All right, so that is looking really good. We've got a crazy dance party going on now. Now, if you pause the talk through and try scrolling the page, you'll see that everything scrolls together.
So pause it, you can see everything scrolls together. She's going to show us one more thing. I do want to point out that what she's doing here is showing you how to work this, which is a lot of what we're doing right now is not necessarily the best practices because you need a full page to really understand, and then it's very hard to, just one key example. So this isn't necessarily really the best way to build a page. Just shift this down relative. There's a bunch of different things you could have them and just in their own div, and these 3 objects in their own div, and you use relative in that case probably might make more sense. But again, we're showing you how to do this. But what she's pointing out is absolute, because there's a new setting. Absolute lets it go like this. She's about to show you a new feature that's not relative or absolute.
And the important thing is that absolute positioning is relative to the top of the web page. So as you scroll down the web page, things that were 10 pixels from the top are going to be moving off screen because you're going farther away from the top of the web page. Another option is fixed positioning, which will actually make it seem like things don't move at all. And if you want to try that out, we can just change H1 from absolute to fixed. And now pause and try scrolling.
So notice how dance party is set there. There's one more that I'm going to show you now. I don't use it all that lot, but you've probably seen it on a lot of other web pages. I think Trinket does it. Google does it a lot. Is instead of fixed, which again you see how everything else moves, or absolute to the web page. So when the web page moves, it's from that corner. The fixed is from the screen, right? The window itself. So it's always that, whatever the 30, 50 pixels it's set for it. So that's important to understand. The other one that's kind of fun, let's see, I think it'll work for us too, is sticky. So what this does, if it works, is make it so it goes to a certain part and then it stops, right? So that's what sticky does. Apparently, it doesn't like to do this for me right now. But basically, it'll stay there and go. So we're going to go ahead and try this out together. The big ones being absolute and fixed. I'll show you a little bit of relative, kind of how it works. I haven't seen it used too much, but again, this might not be a bad time if these were all inside of a div. And then you could make them all relative from where they're at. But again, the problem is it's where they should be. Relative is relative to where they should be. That's one of the key things, and I'll show that in our demonstration as we go through this. So let's go ahead and head over to the trinket. See, I already got a bunch of colors on here, so we can kind of see how this works. But again, let's go over this. We got size, which is around everything. So if we took these colors away right now, you'll see that again, blue is around everything, or well, it's red, but red's around everything. And then we added 1, so that's just the first div, and then we added green around this. So this paragraph doesn't have anything, it's just part of the div. So why I do this is because let's watch the blue move, right? And let you know, so hey, I'm working on blue, we're on 1. 1 doesn't always necessarily mean something to you, but blue you can see real quickly. So position, and let's do the relative first. I don't use that too much, but against relative to where it should be. So that corner, look at this corner, that's where it should be. If I do top 10px, again, it's right there. Its space is still there too. This is another key point to this. The space that it should have is where it should be. So let's go ahead and do left 10 pixels. Again, that's the corner. So it went down 10 and over 10. The corner moved it, and then obviously the whole thing shifted. But the space is still there, right? The space is still there. If I change this to absolute, watch what happens. Spell it right. Again, that space is no longer placeholder, right? That space that was here, so this whole thing shrinks. Also notice it shrinks the element itself. It assumes you don't want to go all the way across when you pull it out. So this is completely pulled out, and it's on top of the element behind. So I'm going to do the green one as well. So I'm just going to copy all this, and this should put it on top of it. And then let's go down like 20 pixels. And that wasn't enough. Let's go 30. So again, these are fixed. Now I'm going to need to like copy a ton of stuff for us to go ahead and change some of this. So I'm going to copy this paragraph a ton of times. So if you want to do this as well, I'm going to paste it a ton because I have no scroll bar, right? To show you fixed and absolute, I need to be able to scroll. Otherwise, right now, that absolute didn't make any sense because it was always at the top. But now you can see this is absolute, right? It goes with the web page. It's not tied to the window. So I'm going to tie one fixed and the other one absolute. So again, the blue is fixed. Remember, it shouldn't move when I scroll. Where green is absolute, it's tied to the web page. It will. And again, having this all memorized, your buddy Google can help you with this, but let's watch it. So again, see, blue stays, green goes. And that's why I labeled this in Give Stuff Backgrounds a lot, so you can see what's going on. But that's it, right? We saw what happened when you did relative. It just kind of shifted it a little bit, and maybe that's what you want sometimes. Maybe padding makes more sense in most cases, but again, that gives you the option to do that relative to where it should be. And it keeps its space. Fixed and absolute, these two we're playing with now, they're that. Now, you need this, right? If I don't put top or bottom, right, it just goes back to where it was. It pulls it out of the order, but it just goes back to where it was. The other thing we're not going to really play with too much is z-index. And remember, z-index is just what's on top. So if I gave this a 2 and this a 3, this would be on top, which it is anyway. So if I made this one a 3, because it came first, and this one a 2, then this one will go on top of it. All right, so we've already kind of played around with that when the green was on top of the blue. So that's about the gist of it. Sometimes one of the big things are fixed and absolute is like making a banner at the top. I want this banner to be at the top. And then if you want it so it stays there all the time, you're going to make it fixed. But do notice how she did have to like push stuff below it because it pulls it out of the scheme of things. you're going to want to make sure that it moves below, right? So actually, I'm going to give this just a 0, 0. And maybe let's give it a height. Let's do 200 px. Whoa, that's way too much. Let's try 100. All right. So, imagine that was menu. You can have it stay like this, and the menu just stays at the top. Go with 100% so it looks more realistic. All right. So again, that's the menu at the top, or it always stays there. But again, notice how it's covering up this paragraph, right? This paragraph is there. So this is what she was saying. If you give this paragraph, I'm going to give this 3, so it doesn't mix with all the rest of them. But if you give that paragraph hashtag 3, some margin top, man, I'm still spelling margin wrong. Margin top, the width we just gave it 100 px. There we go. That bumped this down underneath it, so now we can do that. So again, there's a lot to it. It all depends on what you're trying to do. Just remember, fixed stays there, absolute moves with it. Now they're both fixed, but absolute moves with it. And then relative is relative to where it should be. Absolute and fixed completely pulls it out of it, right? So there's absolute, it goes with it. And you do need to give that top in the lift. That's why it just stayed in its spot where it's supposed to, but it does pull it out. So notice it is actually on top of 3's a crowd. I don't see it well. Because it did pull it out of the position. So as soon as you give it fixed or absolute, it pulls it out of the normal flow, and everything else will shift up to fill in for it. And then absolute stays on the page, fixed stays on the actual screen, right? So that's it. We'll see you next lesson.